Good morning. This morning I'm going to talk to you about the Yamas. I've been asked to talk to you about them. They are one of my favourite teachings, and they're possibly one of the hardest to understand from a modern point of view. Please keep in mind while I'm chatting with you that this is not a television studio, so there's nobody out there to stop the cat interrupting or to stop a phone ringing or to stop somebody knocking on the door. There's just you and me, and whatever happens, happens. And I always hope for peace and calm, and 99% of the time I get it. Okay, in the sutras, I think it's Sutra number 114b, Patanjali says that our yoga, our practice, must be steady and with no gaps. Now I get lots of answers to that, but my interpretation and the interpretation of many other senior teachers is that when you wake up in the morning, your yoga should start, and when you go to bed at night, the yoga finishes. And even then, for some people, it doesn't finish. They do conscious dreaming and things like that attached to their meditation practice, and so their meditation is totally without gaps. Their yoga is totally without gaps. So they're living the life of yoga as laid down by Patanjali. Not all of us can do that. And prior to talking about the Yamas, I thought I'd read to you a quote from a speech given in 1910 by Teddy Roosevelt. He was a Nobel Prize winner, a leader of the Rough Riders, a conservationist, and the 26th President of the United States of America. Now, I'm sure that you've heard this little speech before, but it's quite beautiful. It is not the critic who counts, nor the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could do them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. And I think that's a very good place to start talking about the Yamas, because the Yamas are about tidying up your life, about taking into account consequences. And, you know, when I was bringing up children, it was very easy just to fob them off. For instance, we used to go out to dinner a reasonable amount. And when the kids were toddlers, at some point it became problematical because they didn't understand there was a difference between the kitchen and a restaurant. In fact, they're probably better in the kitchen. And so we would say to them, behave yourself. You know, you're in a restaurant and it's time to be good. And sometimes they would, and sometimes they wouldn't. And then I realized that I wasn't being specific enough. So I would say, this is the time to be good. If you knock over a chair, or you're rowdy, or annoying to other diners, then we will pick you up and take you home, and we will all go home. There will be no restaurant, there will be no fancy dinner. And when they understood that one thing plus another thing led to another thing, that was much easier for them to comply with than a vague be good instruction. And that's like the Yamas. The Yamas are an instruction about how you can live your life better. And like that speech that I just read you, it's something that we have to strive for every day. And sometimes we will win and sometimes we will lose. But we are still striving. And in the end, we will have a better life than those people who know nothing. And that promise comes with a guarantee. I just think that life without the Yamas is fairly empty. And the first of the Yamas, you can do your research into how they were written and those kind of things. They were certainly written by Patanjali many years ago, thousands. And there are 5 basic principles suggested to you if you are interested in following the path of yoga to self-awareness and enlightenment. If you're just half-heartedly following along for other reasons, then you probably won't be terribly interested in the Yamas. They are not presented in an attempt to control your behavior based on a moral imperative. They really are a set of ideas of cause and effect, of consequences. You do this, you get that. The first one is perhaps the most famous, ahimsa, against Himsa, the lion. And I get so upset when people tell me that it's about being nice to people. It is not about being nice to people. It is about not killing. It is the same as the commandment of Jesus, which says, "Thou shalt not kill." Now, if they'd have meant thou shalt not kill the human being, they would have said, "Thou shalt not murder." But they didn't say that. They said, "Thou shalt not kill." That's why the Jains wear masks, and everywhere they go, they sweep the ground, because they take this Yama so seriously that they won't even tread on a ground for fear of treading on an ant. You know, we can take it even a step further, and I don't think people do this, but we are all bacteria. So when you go to the toilet, you are actually killing life. You might be giving life to somebody else with the manure that you make, but you are killing the life in the manure. You are dredging the life out of your intestines. You can take this to the nth degree, but for ourselves, the consideration is, do we want to eat another being or not? And if we do, how do we do it correctly? Because, I was vegetarian from age 9 through to age 65. And I was advised by my acupuncturist to try eating meat because it would be good for me. I wasn't getting the nourishment I should. And that was a big decision for me to make. But other religious groups have made it before me, and the ones that I particularly like are the ISKCON, the Krishna movement. You know, the ones that went around singing Hare Krishna. And the guys in that movement, they're such wonderful cooks. They are beautiful cooks. And, you know, when they cook, they give first the meal to Krishna, the essence of the meal they dedicate to Krishna, and having said the prayer and given the meal to Krishna, they then can eat the meal, which is the part of the meal that Krishna has given to them. it is a lovely way of thinking of it, and that's how I think of it. That I give my meal to God before I eat it. And that's the essence, isn't it, of saying grace. Being aware where your food comes from before you eat it. I know my kids hated to say grace at home. We always did. Right until they left home, they said grace, and didn't like it at all. And the places where I go and I say grace, they get embarrassed. Oh God, she's doing it again. But they don't forget. And it, in this time of lessening fruitfulness of the world, climate change and all those kind of things, it's really important that we understand where our food is coming from and the great sacrifice people make to bring the food to us. Because when you stab into a tomato, the same thing is happening as when you stab into a person or an animal. It's still a living thing, and you're still using it for yourself. If you did a Kirlian photograph of a tomato, you would see the energy coming out, and as you move towards it with a dagger, you would see the energy withdrawing as the tomato felt your energy moving towards it. And as strange as it may seem, it is still a living being. It's made up of the same cells. It's just rearranged differently. It's energy rearranged differently than our energy or the tables or the windows. It's just the same energy, just rearranged differently. So why should we kill it? I recently was counselling a gentleman, a young man actually, who had killed somebody. Oh, he'd been a naughty boy many times more than that, but he had had the experience of killing somebody. And he said to me, after we did the teaching on Ahimsa, and he took me aside and he said, "You don't understand, do you?" And I said, "Well, explain it to me." And he said, "That guy was just a waste of space. I did the world a favour when I took him out." I said, "Oh, that's a point of view, of course, but you took away his opportunity to learn. You took his opportunity to find God this time away. I don't know what you did to his family, but you did something. And very importantly, you changed yourself." And we sat there and we spoke for a long time, and we have continued to keep on speaking. And that young man has become quite a beautiful young man and gone back to work in a different kind of work. He's walking in the steps of Jesus. He's become a carpenter. Excuse me, I just want to move my cushion. And he has become quite a calm and lovely man, quite beautiful to speak to. So, Ahimsa, thou shalt not kill, is really important. And I want you to give great thought about it. It is not about being nice. It is about not killing. It's a very forceful and strong admonition to you to take living beings quite seriously. Doesn't mean you can't hiss, but it means don't kill, okay? And, it's also about taking responsibility for harmful things that are happening around you. And don't forget, you can kill time, kill opportunity, kill somebody's feeling of goodness, kill their ability to move forward. All those killings are not nice either. Kill somebody's confidence in themselves. That's killing. You don't need a dagger to kill. You really don't. You can do it very effectively with the tongue. So yes, Ahimsa, a very, very important yama. The next one, the next one is Satya. And that's about telling the truth. Well, telling the truth is quite problematical, isn't it? telling the truth is rather hard, because the truth is different for everybody. The truth is different. If there were 7 people watching a bank robbery, the police will tell you that those 7 people, even if they're standing almost together, will have a totally different view of what was happening, because they're filtering it through their experience. They can't see it the same because they're filtering through their experience, just the same as you filter through experience when you attempt to tell the truth. The best you can do with the truth is to do the best you can do, and try not to tell fibs. Sometimes people get so used to telling fibs that they can't move forward without them. Those fibs become a part of them. And sometimes I suggest to people that they build a different life in their head than the one they've had, which is quite terrible. And that is helpful. Their intention is not to hurt anybody, but their intention is to be able to live in this world in a calm way. Well, they can't with their life history as it is. So intention is very important when it comes to satya. So you speak with the intention of being truthful and not harming anybody. And I think that's about the best you can do with the truth. You know, even scientists can't be entirely objective, because they're straining it. They're straining it through their experience, aren't they? Another layer of satya has to do with inner truth. The difference between honesty and integrity. Are you the same person when nobody's looking? I hope so. To have integrity is to act in an honest manner when there's nobody watching you. Integrity is the deeper form of satya. So, if you look at the word in Sanskrit, sat means eternal and unchanging, and ya means to do it. So by that definition, satya means actively expressing and being in harmony with the actual truth as you know it. Yes. When you are in this state, when you are thinking in this way, you can't lie or act in a dishonest way, because at every moment you are unified with pure truth itself. Now, we may only feel connected to this level of truth every once in a while, but it's really important to understand it when it happens. The next yama is the yama called theft. Asteya. I love this one because so many of my students really are thieves. And they're not paying attention at all. Even when I pull them up, they don't want to listen. No, thank you. Asteya doesn't mean everything. Asteya does. Asteya means no downloading DVDs. Asteya means no burning CDs and giving them away. Asteya means theft. All kinds of theft. Not just the ones that other people do. Okay? You know, I was holding a retreat some years back, and I had a lovely, lovely piece of music for the meditation session. And I was leaving that evening and the girls came up to me and they said, can we borrow the CD? And I said, oh, certainly. And I said, but don't download, don't burn it. Don't burn copies for yourself, because that is stealing. Oh no, they said, we never do that. Oh no. In the morning, the cook said to me, I've put your CD on the bench. The girls have finished burning it. See, they not only stole, they were not telling the truth either. And if things are stolen from them, or if their opportunities are diminished after that, they should have expected it to be so, because they've stolen and they've told untruths. It's this, Yamas are not, they're kind of, they link into karma, and it's like gravity. It doesn't care whether you believe it or not. It happens. The law of cause and effect. You do this, you get that. It's very, very simple. Don't forget, with stealing, you can also steal time. You can steal opportunity. But stealing is not good. And if you get used to stealing, it just becomes part of your world and you can't get out from under it. One thing just leads to another. And you think about all the excuses that you can put in place to steal, and it just gets terrible. So stealing is not a lovely thing to do. Please, please, don't do it. You know, you could say that you steal from yourself when you get angry, when you hit out. You steal from yourself when you do the pity-pat thing. Oh, I'm a poor thing. You should have pity on me. You're stealing from yourself. You're stealing many things when you do that. And you're stealing things from others because you're expecting them to respond. You're stealing from them the opportunity for correct input. In order to steal, you have to be deeply mired in ignorance about the nature of the reality as we see it. You know, you might have your own views, but from our point of view, life is very prescribed by cause and effect. If you live a life in which you're able to devalue and dehumanize others so that you can steal from them, you will suffer. That comes with a guarantee as well. This suffering occurs because you are stuck. You are really stuck in a video. The entire system of yoga is totally, it revolves around freeing yourself from the fog of ignorance. That's what it's all about. By practicing asteya, you begin to eliminate the suffering of others by not stealing from them and thereby not stealing from yourself. You know, I hope you can see now why when you send me those 2-line descriptions of the Yamas, that I write back and say, please, 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 I want 150 words about this. You can see how deep each one is. And I'm just touching the surface here. You know, we haven't got a whole lot of time. I know you won't sit here, excuse me, I know you won't sit here for 3 hours listening to me jabbering on. The next one Brahmacharya. If I get anybody else saying Brahmacharya is about celibacy, Brahmacharya isn't about celibacy. If you want to know what celibacy does, just go look at the Catholic Church. Would Brahmacharya be about that kind of nonsense? No. Brahma, God, Charya, means walking with God, to walk with God. And celibacy is like a dancer giving up dancing for God. It doesn't make sense. Celibacy for its own sake, or celibacy imposed by others in order to hold up a ridiculous point of view, is not helpful. Brahmacharya works when you get close to God and you want to walk with God. You should have written on the front of your t-shirt, WWGD. What would God do? When you're ready to put that onto your t-shirt, then you're ready to practice Brahmacharya. What would God do? Because Brahmacharya is all about respect. It's respecting yourself and respecting others. How can you respect somebody or yourself by cutting away a beautiful part of your life? Doesn't make sense to me. Brahmacharya is about respect. It's about doing what you do when you do it. So if you're going to have sex, have sex. Don't have sex looking over your shoulder, counting the flowers on the wallpaper. That's not respecting yourself, and it's not respecting others. Brahmacharya is about respecting yourself. If you don't feel like having sex, don't have it. Say, I'm sorry. Sometimes when I'm in these conversations with people, the young ones say to me, but you just don't understand. If I don't have sex with him, he won't go out with me. I said, that sounds like a good deal to me. Somebody who's just going out with you to have sex is not the person to be with. Are you going to feel good about that after you're married? What would happen if you got disfigured? Would he still love you? Are you walking with God? I was talking to somebody recently about this very subject here. And I said, oh, and you're getting married? And he said, yes. And I said, what are your reasons for this? And he said, oh, she's gorgeous. Whew. Wow, she's a really good-looking girl. And I said, does she love you? And he said, oh, I guess she does. And I said, well, what if she slipped and something happened, and you know how things happen, and she made love to somebody else? He said, well, she'd be out the door. I couldn't deal with that. And I said, well, what about you? Oh, well, he said, well, you know, boys will be boys. And I said, do you think if she was in a car accident and she was disfigured, what would you do if her good looks were no longer there? And he said, well, I'd leave her, of course. You know, I couldn't be seen. Oh, no, I couldn't be seen with somebody who wasn't beautiful. I mean, no, it wouldn't do my image any good at all. And I said, what would happen if you were in a car accident? And he said, well, she'd look after me, of course. You know, she loves me. She'd look after me and take care of me and do what was needed. I said, so right through this whole conversation, it's been all about you. It hasn't been about her at all. Where is the walking with God in that? He said, oh, you just don't understand. Oh, I understand very clearly. You know, that's the problem. I understand very clearly. What kind of relationship are you in? Are you walking with God? Do you think before you make any decisions, what would God do? if you can use that little phrase before every decision you make, you are walking with God. Absolutely and definitely you are walking with God. You may slip sometimes, but you are walking with God. And, when I say God, I'm not particularly minding which God. It's all the same energy, whatever you may think. What would God do? What would God do? We think about sex is really fundamental. And if you are brahmachari, if you do decide that right at the moment walking with God to you is the most important thing, and maybe sex comes second, or maybe third or fourth or fifth, or not at all, then you are learning to use that wonderful energy in something else. The whole idea of the Christian celibacy was so that the theory behind it was that the priests could totally devote themselves to their flock and compress all this sexual energy and give it to God and give it to people. But it didn't quite work that way, because it was all right when they were 15, but not terribly suitable when they were in their 30s and decided they wanted families. And doing a little bit of research, I also discovered that there was some consternation in the church in the 1500s, when it was discovered that a lot of priests who had married, this isn't the Catholic Church, who had married were, when they died, their property went to the wife. And the church wasn't terribly happy about that. So they brought in celibacy so that there wouldn't be a wife, and when the priest died, all the belongings would go back to the church. So we have two views on what was causing the celibacy, what was a driving force behind celibacy. And I'll leave you to make your decision. But whatever you're doing, be honest when you're doing it. And don't steal when you're doing it, and don't kill when you're doing it. Walk with God. Ask yourself the question, what would God do? If you're ready to put that on your t-shirt, then you're probably ready to walk with God. Then you're ready to do brahmachari, whatever that means to you. And I don't think that you can totally practice celibacy in a marriage that is not spiritual or has a spiritual base. I don't think you can do that, because your husband may not have entered into the relationship to have one of those marriages. He might have wanted the opposite. That's why he went into the relationship. So before you decide to be terribly, terribly spiritual and be brahmachari, think about the other person first. Don't steal from them. It will come. Brahmachari will come. The next one, the next yama, is a paragraha. And this is what, I'm sure that Gandhi did most of them. He practiced the yamas very faithfully. But this was the cornerstone for him was not wanting more, not taking more than you needed, non-greed. So, a parigraha is a desire for more. There is nothing wrong with having a desire for things. I want to know this, or I want to know that. That'd be good. It's when you become attached to it, that's when it gets difficult. It's really important to be happy with what you have. Give thanks and gratitude for what you have, instead of keeping on wanting the next best thing. One time I lived in a lovely house in Bermagui, right on the point. The view was breathtaking. As you walked in the house, it was jaw-droppingly beautiful. But after you've been there for a few months, you walked in the house and you saw the dust. Or, You saw that the garbage needed taking out. The view became secondary because you got used to it. So if I'd have taken the house just for the view, it would have been a bit of a failure because I didn't pay attention. You know, you can also want more yoga. You can make yourself ill doing yoga. Wanting more, wanting more, wanting more. Being attached. I don't know what I'd do without yoga. If I took it away, I would die, people tell me. If that's how you feel, you need to change. Because it might be taken away from you, and then what would you do? For me, there's always meditation. You know, I could do meditation as long as my mind was reasonable for that. What would I do if I got Alzheimer's? Before I was aware that I was doing yoga, I was doing yoga. If I became unaware, would I still do yoga? Interesting thoughts. Interesting thoughts. How would I do yoga in an unaware state? So yes, greed is not just confined to material goods. Just because you practice yoga is no guarantee that you will escape the subtleties of greed. No, no. Be happy with what you have. You know what the Buddha said? Do what you can with what you've got where you are. He didn't add on to that after you've got the latest television. In verse 30, chapter 2 of the sutras, Patanjali says that the yamas are to be practiced at all times and at all places. He didn't say, oh, well, just do them when you do yoga class. He said, practice them at all times, in all places. You know, some of us would find that very difficult. And I think that if we concentrated on one yama for a period of time, that doesn't mean we forget the rest, but we sort of have in mind the yamas, but we choose one to focus on. And we say, okay, this week I'm not going to tell a lie. Or whatever it is. I'm not going to kill. Don't worry if you forget to practice it, or even if you're not able to follow through. Just choose the next one and move on. It's about having them in your conscious mind and about working on them. It's not about success or failure. The fact that you become aware and you're attempting this is enough of a victory in itself, and very important. Okay, so there's my short version of the yamas. And I hope that when you do your various assignments where the yamas are discussed, that you don't do 3-letter, what is ahimsa? Being nice to people, full stop. Because now I hope that you understand it's so much more than that, and it's the cornerstone, not just of your yoga, but of your life. It is the cornerstone. So, to be totally aware of the yamas is to be totally aware of life. And to not be stuck in ignorance about how life happens. Please take them very seriously. Just because you're studying yoga doesn't mean that you're going to get out of doing them, does it? It means that you now concentrate on them. That it's very important for you, and for me as your teacher, that you begin to be completely aware and start working on them. There's masses and masses on the Google, and there's some beautiful books. So please take the time to do a bit of research, because yes, they apply to you. They are not just words, they are not just poetry, they are not just things, they are the law. They help you understand the laws of cause and effect. And if you have them in your mind, they will make your life much better than it is today, even if you thought it was pretty good today. So yes, thank you very much for being with me. I know this is longer than our usual chats, but it's a big topic. So your choice to change can set you free. Namaste.